So last week I did a video where I redesigned and graded from a scale of 1 to 10 every single NFL team's uniforms from the AFC. This week I'm going to be continuing that series with part 2, this time doing every single team in the NFC. Same rules apply as last week, so let's get it. Up first is the Arizona Cardinals, and well, I really don't think an explanation is really needed. Like, these uniforms are just awful, outdated, like you name it, that describes these uniforms. Any any word that is not positive, that is downright negative, is a good word to describe these uniforms. I like the black helmets that they brought in 2022, but that's about the only aspect I can give them. They have not changed their uniforms since like the early 2000s, and it's become outdated. And until they change, I'm going to give them a 1 out of 10. Just horrible. The worst uniforms in the league. Now, if I were designing the Cardinals uniforms, I would have them have a more consistent striping to like fit today's mold of uniforms. Like have a thin striping on the helmet, a thin striping on the pants, and some like sock stripes, because I think some sock stripes would really tie the uniform together. And the biggest aspects I added was adding in the Arizona flag on the sleeves, which I really think would be a really cool concept because Arizona has such a good flag. Obviously, I added in a black uniform, and I even went a step further as to adding some white pants that they can wear with that black jersey so that they're not wearing black on black all the time. For the City Edition uniform, I actually have two. The first one is basically taking the designs and like the colors of the state flag and putting them on a uniform. And the second one is a sand color uniform that I created to like reflect like the desert, because it does get pretty hot in Arizona. And for the throwbacks, I obviously wanted to give them like a throwback to the uniforms they wore back in like the 80s when they were called the Phoenix Cardinals. And this comes in both home and away colors, and those are the Arizona Cardinals, ladies and gentlemen. Now moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. Now the Falcons, in my opinion, they have some pretty good uniforms, in my opinion. I know for a fact that a lot of people didn't like them when they came out back in 2020, and people still don't like them. But to me, they're fine. I really don't like the move from a red jersey to a black jersey for the main home. Like, I think they should have stuck to the red. The all white uniform for the away is fine, I guess. The gradient uniform, I applauded them for trying out something new. A lot of people don't like them, but I kind of do. I think it looks nice. Now, like a lot of people, my favorite uniform in this entire set is the throwback uniforms, especially that they added the red helmet back. Honestly, I think that looks pretty good. Overall, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. They don't have the worst uniforms in the league, in my opinion, but they could improve. For the main home uniform, I decided to go back to the red uniform, and I also added in a red helmet to be the main helmet. And the design features like a triangle pattern that is featured on the collar, the sleeves, and the pants. Obviously, the main away would then be the white with some red pants. And I also added in all white. And for the black uniform, I decided to add in the black helmet because I do think it would look pretty nice. Obviously, you can wear the all black with white pants too. And for the City Edition uniform, I basically wanted to add like a bandana pattern with and a red and gold look to like pay homage to like Atlanta hip hop, because I think that would be pretty fitting. And obviously for the throwback, you have the throwback that they have now. You then have an away version of the throwback, and those are the Falcons, ladies and gentlemen. Now moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Now, if I can say anything about the Carolina Panthers uniforms, is that I hate how the Panthers like insist on having the black jersey as the main home uniform, even though they have that most gorgeous blue they could use. Like, honestly, those should be the main home uniforms. But nevertheless, I really think that these Panthers uniforms are a bit outdated. I really do think that they're due for a uniform redesign, but I don't think that they're that bad, to be honest. Like, I think they're pretty good each and every set. I do like the inclusion of a black uniform that they have in 2020. Like, those black helmets look pretty awesome in my opinion, but I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. Not the worst uniforms, but it wouldn't hurt to update their uniforms a little bit. Now, to be honest, I really had a lot of fun redesigning these uniforms. The uniforms, like, they use like a African patterning, basically like kind of like a a Black Panther inspired uniform. Basically, you have the necklace that like T'Challa would wear. You have like you will like kind of like an African patterning right there on the uniform, and I really think this will look good. Obviously, the main blue would be the main home uniform, and the black uniform would be used as an alternate. I wanted to include a black helmet in there as well, like they do now, but I decided to save it. I decided to save the black helmet for the City Edition uniform. Speaking of the City Edition uniform, I decided to include like a black and purple set to like it was inspired by the suit that Black Panther wore to pay homage to Chadwick Boseman, a Carolina native and the late actor. May he rest in peace. And the throwback is basically the exact same uniforms that they have now, but with the older logos, and those are the Panthers. Now moving on to the Chicago Bears. Now the Bears, honestly, I really don't have any critical points that I could bring up for the Bears uniforms. Like honestly, I think they're pretty good. Sure, there are a few minor tweaks that I could emphasize, but other than that, like their uniforms are pretty solid in my opinion. That navy blue and orange colorway is just so good. Um, I like the change that they had for the orange uniforms. They brought in the orange helmet. I think that uniform looks pretty good. And for the throwbacks, I like the throwbacks. I like the throwbacks that they have. I think they're pretty good. But I much prefer the throwbacks that they had before. But that's a bit of a minor nitpick. So I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10. Because their uniforms are pretty good. Now for my redesigns, I didn't really change much. All I really did was change the striping slightly to like make the striping a little bit more consistent all across all of their uniforms. Obviously, the helmet remains untouched, and I also got rid of the GSH initials on the sleeves, and instead I put them on a patch that's based on a logo that they used to have, and I also added in an all orange uniform with orange pants with an orange helmet, and obviously you can have orange on white with this set. And for the City Edition uniform, I decided to bring in a powder blue and red look, basically an homage to the Chicago flag, because the Chicago flag is a pretty big staple of the city of Chicago. And for the throwbacks, I brought in both throwbacks, their previous and their current throwbacks, and those are the Chicago Bears, everybody. Now moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. Now the Cowboys uniforms, at least their main home uniforms, I really like them. They're honestly like so good. Like they shouldn't work, but somehow it does and it looks amazing. However, I wish that they would wear their navy blue and silver look a little bit more often. In fact, I kind of wish they would wear that as their main home uniform, to be honest. But nevertheless, I really like the inclusion of a white helmet they had in 2022. And I really like the throwback uniforms that they brought in 2022 against the Giants on Thanksgiving. Although I kind of wish they had a silver stripe to, if they're going to wear that white helmet with the color rush uniform. Overall, an 8 out of 10 because the Cowboys have some pretty decent uniforms in my opinion. Now, if I were designing the Dallas Cowboys uniforms, I would first make the navy blue and silver look the main home uniform and obviously throw in some navy blue pants to have an all navy blue look. And for the away version, I decided to create my own away version of the home uniform, basically creating an all white jersey with navy blue pants, and obviously you can go white on white. That would look cool too. For the first alternate is basically the exact same home and away uniform that they have now, and the second alternate brings in basically the exact same alternate that I previously mentioned, but with like a royal blue version. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. And for the City Edition uniform is basically an all royal blue uniform with a white helmet to pay homage to like Dallas's murals because I feel like that would be a nice touch. And for the throwback is basically the exact same Thanksgiving throwback that they have now. Throw in an away version of that and you have a complete set for the Dallas Cowboys. Now over in the Motor City, the Detroit Lions, honestly, if I could say anything about their uniform is that I really love that shade of blue that they have. That shade of blue is just gorgeous and I absolutely love it. The away uniforms, I like them too. And I really like the change that they made to make the white on blue. Honestly, that looks so gorgeous as well. The silver uniforms, though, they kind of weigh the uniforms down, but they're not that bad. It's the throwback uniforms that mainly do for me. Like, they really need to improve on the throwback uniforms, in my opinion. Overall, I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. Hopefully, they can improve. Now, for my redesigns, I basically kept the uniforms the same. The only thing that I really did was that I moved the word marks on the sleeves, and I decided to create a patch on the chest that says the WCF instead of having it on the sleeves because I feel like that would be the better option. And I also brought in a black uniform because I really like when the Lions have a black uniform. And for the City Edition uniform, I brought in a navy blue uniform. I kind of wanted to like bring in like an automobile like sports car look. I don't know. But for the throwback is basically a Barry Sanders throwback. And you have an away version of this, and those are the Detroit Lions, ladies and gentlemen. Now moving up to Wisconsin, if I could criticize the Green Bay Packers uniforms for a minute, I really don't like the shade of green that they use. Like in a certain lighting, it looks fine, I guess. It looks pretty good, like close up. But in a certain lighting, it kind of looks a little bit too dark for me. It looks a little bit like I don't know. I just there's just something about it that I don't like. The white uniforms, the away uniforms are pretty good, and I really like the all white uniforms that they bring in occasionally. I also really like the color rush slash throwback uniforms that they brought in 2021 because the previous throwback uniforms were just they were something else. They were not it, to be honest. Overall, I'm gonna give them a 7 out of 10. Hopefully, they can change up the grain, and hopefully, they can move their uniforms to a more modern cloth. Now for the Green Bay Packers, I really didn't change their uniforms that much. The only thing I really did was like lighten up the shade of green, like I said. Obviously, you can have an all green look. The away uniform is untouched, and obviously you can have an all white look for an away alternate uniform. For the first color rush uniform, I basically is basically the exact same throwback slash colors uniform that they have now, but I changed up the pant stripe to be a little bit more consistent. And the biggest change is basically the helmet. I made it a little bit more reflected with a green G. Honestly, I think that will look pretty cool. And for the second color rush, it's basically an all yellow uniform, but with a green helmet. And honestly, I think that would look pretty cool. For the City Edition uniform, I wanted to bring back the navy blue and like the tannish colored uniform, and I also added in their current number font. You probably seen it like on some redesigns online. And for the throwback uniform, I basically used the green that they have now to pay homage to their Super Bowl one look. And obviously having a away version of this, and those are the Green Bay Packers. Now moving on to the Los Angeles Rams. Now full disclosure, I am a Rams fan, but that doesn't mean that I don't have any critiques about their uniforms. For one thing, the gradient on the uniforms just doesn't look good, to be honest. And I really like the change they made to make the alternates that they introduced in 2021 the main away uniforms, because the bone uniforms, they're awful, disgusting. Overall, until they improve, I know that they can do a lot better. 6 out of 10. Now, for my redesigns, I didn't really change a lot about the uniforms. The only thing I really did was get rid of the gradient on the uniform, and I also removed like the word mark tag that they have on the side of the jersey, and I put it on the front of the chest. I think that will look better. And I also introduced some white pants in the look because I think they will look good with white pants. And for the first colors uniform, I basically wanted to introduce a yellow uniform, but with a yellow helmet instead of the blue, because I think it will look a lot better with a yellow helmet. And for the second color rush uniform, it's basically like a Deacon Jones throwback uniform, but like modernized and with a white helmet. And for the City Edition uniform, I basically wanted to pay homage to like the white horned navy blue helmet that they had when they were in the Coliseum, back from like 2017 and 2019, I think. And speaking of the Coliseum, I wanted to introduce like an Eric Dickerson throwback, the throwback uniforms that they used to have before they got rid of them when they redesigned. And obviously we have an away version of this throwback, and those are the Los Angeles Rams. Now for the final team in the NFC North, the Minnesota Vikings. Now the Vikings uniforms, in my opinion, I really like them. I really like the horns they have on the jersey, and I really like the horns on the helmet. Although the pant stripe, I think they could fix up a little bit because the pant stripe looks a little bit inconsistent depending on the pants that you're wearing. But nevertheless, I really like the colorless uniforms that they have, the purple with yellow accents. Honestly, I feel like those are pretty underrated uniforms. And I really don't have a lot to say about the Vikings uniforms, to be honest. An 8 out of 10, like they have some pretty solid, some pretty good uniforms in my opinion. Now, for my redesigns, I basically included a little bit of the North. I decided to include a little bit of a North pattern to the uniform, like a little bit of that Viking Norse knot to the uniform. I think that would look really nice. I also included it on the helmet to like because I really think it would look pretty good on the helmet. And I also fixed up the number font a little bit to make it a little bit more consistent. Obviously, other uniforms that you can include are the Color Rush uniform with the all purple with yellow accents. And another Color Rush uniform that I wanted to introduce was an all yellow uniform with a yellow helmet because I feel like that would look pretty good as well. For the City Edition uniform, I decided to go with like a light blue slash like navy blue look. I wanted to give it like a snowfall look to like pay homage to like the snowy weather of Minnesota. I think that would be appropriate. And for the throwbacks, I basically wanted to go with like an 80s slash 90s look. I wanted to pay homage to the uniforms that they had back then. Obviously, you have the away version of this uniform, and those are the Minnesota Vikings. Now, for the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion, I'm not going to say that their uniforms are bad because they're not. The black on gold uniform looks really nice, in my opinion. But the black on black just doesn't hit as well because of that yoga pants look. I really don't understand why they took away like the striping on their uniform. Like it looks so good. I don't understand why they're going with this look. The colorless uniforms were honestly some of my favorite in the entire league, but then they ruined it with a black helmet. Like the black helmet just doesn't look good in my opinion. I prefer the gold helmet. And they brought back the throwback uniforms, but god damn, do they have to change the color of the helmet to match it. Overall, a 6 out of 10. They could improve, but they're not that bad either. Now, for my designs, I basically modeled the entire uniform off the colorless uniform that they have now. I also darkened the gold a little bit to make it a little bit more vibrant to like better fit New Orleans. Obviously, the black on black is going to be the main home, but you could also go black on gold for a home alternate. And the away uniform is going to be an all white, but you can also go with a white on black for an away alternate. And I also wanted to do something interesting for the Saints, so I brought in some like Mardi Gras uniforms. So the first uniform is a purple one, and the second one is a green one. And for the City Edition uniform, I basically wanted to include like a Mardi Gras look for that one too, but this time it's all black. And I have an away version of this uniform with an all white version of this uniform. For the throwback uniforms, I wanted to pay homage to the first uniforms they ever had when they were founded back in like the 60s, I think. I don't know, I could be wrong. But those are the New Orleans Saints, everybody. Now, for the New York Giants, there are three key points that kind of turn me off to these uniforms. Number one, I really don't like the simplicity that they have with the home blue uniforms. Like, those uniforms just look a little bit too boring. I also don't like that the away uniforms are completely different from the home uniforms. I really think that both home and away should look the same, in my opinion. Like, I don't like that difference. And I really like the throwbacks that they came up with in 2022. But for some reason, they have an away version of this throwback, but with a different colored helmet. And that kind of bothers me. Either go with one colored helmet or go with the other. You can't have both. Overall, a 5 out of 10. These Giants uniforms really need a lot of improvement to do, in my opinion. Now, for my Giants designs, I basically based the design off their current away uniforms, but I basically wanted to include more red and white. Like, all colors were represented in this uniform. I made sure of that. I also brought in back the blue pants to complement the away uniform because they used to have that and they got rid of them. I don't know why, but I brought them back. And I also decided to add some stock stripes to add another interesting element to the uniform. I also decided to bring in an all red uniform before like the color rush uniform. I think that would look nice. And I also added in a red helmet to add to that. And I also brought in a all red uniform with white pants. For the City Edition uniform, I basically based it off the current away uniforms with the red numbers. But I wanted to include a little bit more blue, and I also added in a white helmet. And for the throwback uniforms, it's basically the exact same throwbacks that they have now. Obviously, both helmets are the same, and those are the New York Giants, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for the defending NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles uniforms, in my opinion, are just flat out amazing. Like that winged helmet is the second best helmet in the entire league behind the Bengals. And that midnight green uniform, that midnight green color is just so awesome. Like, it is so beautiful. Like, honestly, I feel like it fits Philadelphia really well. I also like the black uniforms that they have. And I like the black helmet that they have right now, but I kind of prefer the midnight green helmet to be paired with the black uniforms. And I'm so glad that they're bringing back the Kelly green throwback uniforms next season. And I know a lot of people are saying that these should be the main home uniforms and they should go back to this look. But the Eagles won the Super Bowl in midnight green, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna stick to midnight green. And also, I think the midnight green is a superior look in my opinion. Overall, I'm going to give them a 9 out of 10. They do have a little bit of tweaks that they can improve on, but the Eagles uniforms are so close to being perfect. Now, for my Eagle redesigns, I basically kept the uniforms and the color schemes the same. The only thing that I really did was change the striping on the pants to be a little bit more consistent. I also added that exact same striping to the jersey, and I also added in a midnight green on black look to add an alternate version for the home uniform. Obviously, the main away would then be white on midnight green, but you can also go with an all white uniform. You also have the black uniform with the midnight green helmet because I prefer that over the black helmet. And for the City Edition uniform, they used to have these throwbacks with like these blue and yellow throwbacks, and I wanted to like pay homage to those throwbacks and also the sunny environment of Philadelphia. And for the throwback uniforms, is basically the exact same throwbacks that people have been clamoring for. I did change the striping a little bit to, I think, improve the uniform. Obviously, having a away version of this, and those are the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, moving on to my arch rivals, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the 49ers, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they kind of went through a bit of a redesign. This season, they went from like two stripes on the jersey to three. And honestly, this change is much better. I think like this improves the uniform like a little bit. Although I do wish that they included a little bit more gold on the jersey, and I do wish they moved on from the gray face mask. But nevertheless, the throwback uniforms that they unveiled in 2021, those are honestly some awesome uniforms. Like those are honestly, I think, the best in their arsenal. And I really like that they have both sets of home and away uniforms. I think every single team should start doing that. And these uniforms are just awesome. 9 out of 10. If it weren't for those little flaws that I mentioned, I think these could be very well 10 out of 10. Now, for my designs, I didn't change a whole lot of the uniform. The only thing I really did was add a little bit of gold on the striping. And I also got rid of the gray face mask and replace it with a gold. I also decided to add in some red pants for a home alternate because I think that would look pretty good. Obviously, the main away would then be the white on gold, but you could also pair it with white pants for an away alternate. That would look pretty cool. That would look pretty cool too. And for my first colorless uniform, I decided to go with an all black uniform, but including a little bit more gold. And I brought back the helmets that they had, like I think in like the late '90s. And I also decided to go for the City Edition uniform, a secondary colorless uniform, but like in throwback form with like gold accents. And speaking of throwbacks, it's basically the exact same throwbacks that they have now. You have an away version of this, and those are the 49ers. Now, moving on to the final team in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I used to say that the Chargers were the best uniforms in the NFL, but that was before I remember that these uniforms exist. Like, these uniforms are just flat out awesome. I love it when football teams, like, go all out like this. Like, these uniforms were executed to perfection. The all navy blues, the home uniforms are my favorites, but I also love the away uniforms. And I also love the fact that they also have these silver uniforms that they could use for as away alternates. I think that is pretty cool too in of itself. And but the elephant in the room should be the action green uniforms. A lot of people say that it's a little bit too bright, and to me, I think I agree with that. But that's just a minor nitpick in my opinion. 10 out of 10 uniforms. Like these uniforms are just flat out perfect. Now, for my designs, I didn't really change a thing. The only thing I really did was darken the green a little bit and I did that for reasons I'll explain later. And I also added in a little bit more green on the silver and white pants so that it would look a little bit better. Obviously, the away would be all white, but you could also go with white on navy blue. And the reason why I darkened the green was to make the all green uniform a little bit better. Obviously, I added in a green helmet because I think it would be pretty awesome if like the Seahawks went with like a green similar to like Oregon. I think that would look pretty awesome. And obviously, you have these silver uniforms that they could wear for away games. And for the City Edition uniform, I wanted to combine elements from like their throwback uniforms and their home uniforms and combine them all together. You have like the throwback color scheme, but you have like the branding of like the current font. I don't know. And for the throwbacks, obviously, you have the old logos, you have the royal blue on silver look, and you have the away version of this, and those are the Seattle Seahawks. Now, moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, if I'm going to be honest for a second, the Buccaneers uniforms they had before, in my opinion, they weren't that bad, to be honest. They were just executed in a pretty bad way. But like the concept of these uniforms, they were not that bad. Like honestly, if they executed a little bit, they would have been a lot better. But nevertheless, I love the redesigns that they came up with. I love the all red on gray uniforms, honestly. Like those uniforms are my favorite. And I also love the away uniforms that they have, the white on gray. I prefer that over the white on white. And a lot of people don't like the all gray uniforms that they came out with. But to me, I really like them. Like those uniforms are really good in my opinion. And overall, I'm gonna give them an 8 out of 10. These uniforms are pretty good. Now for my designs, I basically wanted to like make sure like the pirate like theme of the uniform is driven into the uniform. So I wanted to give them like a little bit more extreme uniforms. Basically, I decided the skull and crossbones, like the sword and skull thing on side of the flag will replace the actual flag on the helmet. And the uniform also like takes like a striping pattern that like basically like is a little bit more extreme. And also I decided to add in black to the color scheme because I feel like it will fit in the pirate vibe in my opinion. And for the City Edition uniform, I wanted to combine the current branding with the throwback branding and basically create like a new uniform. And obviously you have the creamsicle uniforms as a throwback. You have the away version of this, and the second throwback is basically the exact same uniforms that they have now to pay tribute to their first Super Bowl win. You have an away version of this, and those are the Bucks, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for the final team of this video, we have the Washington Commanders. Now, racist and controversial name aside, when they were called the Washington Redskins, these uniforms were actually not half bad. Like, I really like the uniforms. Like, there were a few things that could have been improved on, but I like the uniforms. Overall, they were pretty good. And then when they changed to the Washington football team, they still kept the overall uniforms intact. Like, I really like that about them. And then they changed to the Commanders, and well, let's just say there were a few problems with it. First of all, I really don't like that they removed the striping on the pants. They look like that yoga pants look for some reason. I don't know why they did that. Second off, the main home uniforms have like yellow numbers, and it doesn't look good with the white pants. If it were yellow pants, it would look better. And I'm gonna go with positive right here. I really like the striping on the away uniforms, and I really like the black uniforms. Like honestly, I think those are the best uniforms in the entire set. And overall, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. Like these uniforms are not necessarily terrible, but they are a little bit underwhelming, and I think they can improve. Now, if it were up to me, I would basically like go back to like the Redskins slash football team look, and I decided to like bring back the striping on the helmet and like basically base the striping of the entire uniform based off of that. Obviously, the sock stripes are back, the striping on the pants is changed, and the striping on the jersey is changed to accommodate this. And you have different pairs for different uniforms. And I also decided to bring back an all yellow uniform, but with a yellow helmet. And I decided to keep the black uniform and add a black helmet. For the City Edition uniform is basically a tribute to like our nation's capital and our flag's colors. And one thing I did do was add like a military font based on army uniform. I think that would be fitting for Washington. And the throwback uniforms are basically the exact same uniforms that they had before they changed from the Redskins. I did, however, change the logo on the helmet to be like a W in a circle. And those are the Washington Commanders. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Every single NFL team's uniforms redesigned and graded. If you like this video, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and like. And that is it for me today. I will see y'all next week. Thank you for watching and God bless.